I'll just play this quickly while people join, and then if you pick the song, I'll think about what I might do. Hopefully that's loud enough. Tonight's stream is called Energy Lockdowns, and this is about the lockdown of more than just one kind of energy. So as usual, I'm going to approach this from an angle that might be a little bit different from what people are expecting, but it will definitely cover a lot of what people might consider to be important aspects of considering what may be coming. So the first thing I'll do is I'll read an excerpt from the post that I put out a couple of weeks ago, and then I'm going to go through some points for you. I've written here, if you allow your energy to retract and constrict, you will be subject to the world. And subject also means a slave to the world. If you allow yourself to expand into the world, irrespective of the offer or illusion, you will live life to the full. A lot of people have been saying things feel eerie lately, and I wrote this a couple of weeks ago, and it's gotten even more so now. Those people are mostly women. Now, that's not to say that men aren't feeling things as well, but they're mostly women. And women that are sensitive and intuitive. Before COVID happened, it was the women who could feel something was off, and a lot of men were behind the eight ball. This is a topic I'm going to cover more throughout the next couple of months. There are many reasons things can feel eerie, so it's wise to listen but not create constructive mind based on fears. I'll break this down further at the end of the stream. Like last time, some people will be heavily affected and others won't. That part is the offer and the choice. Not the part of restriction and challenge, but what becomes of it. The result, the agreement, the choice. Natural law is protective for those who choose to expand. And like last time, if anything happens, your job, business, or livelihood can be protected or improved. Your relationships can be safe. Your energy safe. But like last time, it can all be taken away depending on how well you know who you are in relation to the world, the offer, and the illusions. Okay, so we'll break this down further throughout the stream, but these are the points I wanted to start with because I feel like there's a lot of people talking about potential energy lockdowns on social media that I've seen. I get shared, a few videos here and there. And I like what a lot of people are doing insofar as they are thinking ahead. No one really called the lockdowns or no one really called COVID before that happens. But if you look at the amount of influencers these days that are calling what they consider to be what's coming, which is energy lockdowns and so on and so forth, it's really actually a lot of people. So it's not like it's a secret, it's been known for a while, like quite a while, and people are onto it now and people are sharing the way that they see the agendas and narratives before they play out. But very rarely are people talking at it from a point of it's an offer and here's how we can handle things in a more empowered way. It's usually, stockpile the baked beans and the toilet paper and write it out, which really means that no matter what, whether you accept from a moral or a personal standpoint, or you hate it, or you want to fight it, or you'll go with the flow with it. Either way, you're accepting that offer. It's just that you're writing out in a way that you think is helping for your potential personal circumstances. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but obviously there are far more empowered ways we can handle things, as we proved a lot. Many of us proved a lot during the COVID times, where you can handle things in ways that actually mean that life gets better in many or in every way even. So I'll go through a few points that we might not have considered and we'll see what might help. And as I said, feel free to put questions in the question box rather than the comment box, and I will get to those during the stream. So energy, what we can control, why it doesn't matter, and getting caught in illusion/loosh, which is where your energy is taken, your vital internal currency, versus having clarity. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the reality of stockpiling. Everybody talks about being prepared. Being prepared is a multifaceted approach to life. So one way that we can think of being prepared is having food growing in the garden. setting up community networks, having 3 to 6 months of food and water stored. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm never going to tell people don't do that. And what I'm about to say should not be taken as advice. You should copy. You should believe what I say. You should believe what your heart or your gut tells you. I don't store food, and I'm going to explain now why. During 2020, first of all, even prior to COVID, I've been aware of truthers and end days and prophecies that were supposed to come in Y2K, 2008, 2012, all the times since I was a teenager. So I've seen people stockpiling food all of this time in shipping containers, in dugouts, in, you name it, I've seen it. What I've also seen is a lot of food perish. I've seen a lot succumb to rats. I've seen a lot succumb to, various forms of perishing food. There's many different ways you can lose it, but I've seen that a lot. I've also seen people hide away from the world thinking that quote unquote climate change was going to come and take away their livelihood, their life. And I've seen people sequester themselves into a bunker where there's no actual real threat and become very sick. Not just unhealthy, but actually very sick because of what they've put themselves through as they're preparing for what they believe to be an end time and going through their stockpile of baked beans and stored water and the rest of it. Once again, as I say this, please do not take this advice. Please do not take this as you believe what I'm saying. I'm saying you listen to your heart and your gut. I'm just sharing my experience as to why I don't personally store food. So that's one of the realities of stockpiling, is it doesn't always go to plan. And when people have a plan, this is the key part. When people have a plan and life doesn't go according to plan, they generally get disheveled to the point of severe disempowerment, which can turn into severe depression, burning through all of their body's stores of minerals and life force. So you have somebody who's just really doesn't know what's going on and then just has to deal with what's there in front of them. They've got a baseline energy level. Then you have somebody who thinks that they're getting prepared, so they get excited. They think, I can handle the world, I can handle a flood, a fire, a lockdown, whatever it is, aliens. And then when their plan doesn't work out, where do you think they go? Back down to baseline? Most of the time they go down into the depths. That isn't even a factor for people who are just dealing with life as life meets them and they meet life. Now, once again, I'm not saying this is a hard and fast rule, but I've just seen this many times, and it's enough times for me personally to know that there are other ways that not everybody should, but I can handle these types of affairs. And this is exactly how I handled 2020 throughout, even when there was, people thought that, stuff was going to happen that was never going to happen. But the reality of where nutrition and sustenance comes from. So, actually, let me talk about stockpiling, because these parts are important. I don't think people this isn't necessarily common knowledge. So let's say you stock canned meats, baked beans, dills, pickles, and that kind of thing. But you haven't made them. You've got jars that you've bought from a store, and you've got cans. And what happens with cans and the canning process is that if you're not really careful, and nobody is, you run the risk of ingesting a lot of tin. You can argue that if you have enough minerals, your body can mitigate influxes of tin. So if people eat tin tuna here and there and whatever else, if you're getting enough magnesium and you're getting enough potassium and you're getting enough cadmium and you're getting enough other organic minerals, yes, it will displace, inorganic tin, lead, mercury, silver, etc. But what's not going to happen in a bunker situation is you getting in enough. Now, you might say, well, hey, I'm going to store minerals as well, fulvic minerals and these minerals and rock minerals and sand minerals and space minerals. But it's not going to mitigate going through daily intake of canned goods. Now, are there people that have gone through survival situations and survived off canned goods and there's no sign of, tin ingestion and whatever? Yeah, of course. So I'm not saying it's a hard and fast rule, but it's just I wouldn't personally want to risk that. I've seen people on as little as 3 to 6 months on stored food diets get severe tooth rot to the point where it could have caused death through the infection. At the very least, they're going through extreme pain. The body can fast a week, no problem. If you're a little bit experienced with fasting and you don't have a weak mind, you can do a month and not really suffer. You can be, hungry a little, you might lose a bit of weight, but you're going to be fine. You can go a month without food as long as you've got clean water. But that's the next part I'll talk about. Not recommended, but you can do it, so you shouldn't stress. Usually what happens when people stress out about things is they burn up all their mineral resources. Not a good thing to do. The other element of stockpiling is that not only are you going to have a non-nutrient diet, you will generally be taking in things that are going to pull whatever stores of minerals and nutrients you have out of your body. It's just not a good way to go about life. Now, moving on from that, do you know how much food is in your garden? Whether or not you're growing food. So Summer and I are planting more food at the moment. Not enough to be in a lockdown or a survival situation just because we like having our own food, just herbs, things like that. That's not enough to live off, but we enjoy the gardening, we enjoy our own herbs. And there are so many worms and witchetty grubs and whatever else you want to find in the garden, in the soil. And now that's not available to everybody per se, but it's out there in nature. You don't have to go far to find a witchetty grub, a worm. Ants are a huge dish. You know what's funny about the inversions of like the world and the system is when your WEC puppets are telling you that you'll eat bugs and things like that. The funny thing is people resist that so heavily and they say, I'll never eat bugs, you'll never make me eat bugs and I'll figure out ways to have food coming in, etc. Bugs are extremely nutrient dense. There's always this element of truth in the inversions that it's like a clue that you should be listening to. It's not to say that you should accept their offer of, eating bugs and whatever else. But insects, bugs, witchetty grubs, worms, they are so nutritious. If you are in a survival situation, if you're coming off a pretty standard diet and you had to go into that where you're pretty much intermittent fasting and then you're eating live, raw, natural insects and bugs and whatever, you're going to be much healthier than you were living your ordinary life. So once again, I'm not saying that this is something to look forward to. I'm not suggesting that you put all your eggs in that basket. I'm just saying if it happened, don't stress. You'll probably end up healthier and fitter than you are now. You'll spend more time outdoors. You'll get more natural nutrition, which also nutrition doesn't just come from food. It comes from breath. It comes from the sun. It comes from the stars. It comes from our communication and our communion with other people, our family, our friends, our neighbors. It comes from many different factors and many different sources. Okay, so freaking out and being so like, gotta have enough food for 6 to 12 months. I guarantee you most of those people are worse off than a standard average Joe on the street that is just able to meet life in the moment. Almost guarantee it, like to a 99% guarantee. Okay, so that's the reality of stockpiling and a little bit about where nutrition and sustenance come from. Now, I'll talk about water because, like I said before, you can quite easily go a month without food as long as you have clean water. The issue with storing water is that it'll be a non-biologically compatible form of water. Now, will it stave off severe dehydration? Yes, it will. Is it better than not having water? Absolutely. Now, if you're in a survival situation, you have a family and children, you absolutely want to be getting them water. Like, don't do any of this dry fasting stuff. Don't put a kid through that. Don't put your wife through that. Depending on some people are stronger minded than others, but I'm just saying, generally speaking. However, also take note that water that sits still and becomes tepid for too long is not really biologically available. It will, quote unquote, hydrate to a minimal degree, a survival degree. But it's not going to be nourishing and properly hydrating the body in the way that we are supposed to get hydration. Will it stave off death and dehydration? Yes. Is it good for you? That's debatable and highly questionable. It's not just the tepid water, the stillness. It's is it stored in plastic for that amount of time? How long has it been sitting for? Are you adding beneficial minerals to the water to make it more bioavailable, make it softer, and make it better for the body? You can, of course, drink your own urine. And a lot of people in survival situations have done very well looping urine, which means that everything you pee out, you drink back in. Not only is that helpful in a survival situation, but a lot of people do Shivambu practices where they loop urine for a week just because they are specifically doing that and they heal from degenerative conditions that they've gotten themselves into. So even urine is highly structured. It contains all the information that your body generally needs to survive, thrive, live, grow. even just off urine, has stem cells, blah, 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 blah. I'm not here to recommend everybody does urine therapy in Shivambu. I'm just saying in that kind of situation, there is more out there than meets the eye. You do not have to be a nutter prepper and, think that you're going to go 6 months on stored water and stored canned goods. Not good for the body at all, or the mind, or the spirit. Also because you're running from life. So remember, at the end of this stream, I'm going to reread what I started it with, and I'm going to break that down a little further. Okay, the reality of saying no and acting in a different capacity. It's all well and good for people, especially the influencers out there that are saying, you just got to say no to lockdowns. It's not about what you say. It's not about what you resist. It's about who you are and what you do. It's the capacity in which you live. Not in which you run and hide, not in which you fight, not in which you protest and resist. It's the capacity in which you live. It's your standing. It's your standing relative to an offer. It's your standing relative to yourself, your true self, and your standing relative to God or your creator, or life, nature, whatever you want to call that. That's what it is. So how do you do that? How do you act in that capacity? How do you live with a standing relative to that is highly empowered and supersedes it? Well, that takes a lot of work, obviously. It takes experience. It takes discernment. Discernment, and which is a form of judgment, is so key to be able to live life well. And that was the main difference between people in 2020 to 2023 or 4. Discernment. Discernment is judgment. So you had the people that couldn't discern at all, flipped out, became nutty and loopy, and self-selected themselves out of a beautiful potential life. Then you had people in the middle that were had enough discernment to know that something's wrong, but not enough discernment to avoid the trap of falling to truther disempowerment traps where they're pointing their fingers at pedophiles and prime ministers and presidents and everything else. That got people nowhere. That got people down-regulated in their being. Then you had people that had the ability to discern what was in front of them, what was illusory, what was past and beyond that, and how they could actually meet life to a higher capacity and a higher degree. Those people either kept their jobs and got a pay increase. They might have got a promotion. They might have left it altogether because they knew that wasn't the life they were destined for and it was not serving them. They pivoted, and then life served them much better. And they're way better off as a result. Financially, health, happiness, relationships, everything. So discernment goes a long, long way. But you also need experience to be able to build up your discernment. But most of all, you need to be able to have humility. You need to be able to drop the facade, drop the idea that you know everything, drop the need to outsource to a higher authority, other than God, other than life, like not television, not personalities, influencers, high profile media people, mainstream especially. But even more than mainstream, you've got your alternative media that almost all of it, especially anything with a decent amount of success and broadcast bandwidth, it's more than likely, it's all I can say in a live stream without being able to show you directly and break things down with specific examples, more than likely it's not there to serve you. So you need to develop your discernment. You need to exercise your discernment. You need to develop your standing. And first and foremost, that comes with developing your standing with yourself and your creator, life, God, nature. You need to develop that. How do you do that? You need to actively do that. You need to actively express that. Ask questions. Even walk around to appear like you're a nut job to other people. Asking life every second of the day. Life, God, nature, speak to me. What's this here to show me? What am I here to do? How am I here to serve you or life to a higher degree? What's my purpose here? What's my capacity here? Just constantly ask and you'll receive. If you can do that, you'll be way better off than somebody that's not doing that. If you're just beginning to develop this sense of being and standing and living life in this capacity. So moving on from that, I've written all current systems can work in our favor. So farmers, for example, there's a lot of disempowerment when it comes to, we're not allowed to do this. They're coming to burn our crops. They came to shoot all of our animals. They came to whatever, they just let themselves onto our property and just decimated and we're not allowed to sell you raw milk. We're not allowed to sell you meat direct. We're not allowed to sell you our corn. It's like, that's not true. That's true in the capacity that people are currently operating in and under. If you change your standing and you change the capacity in which you live, work, and you express into the world, none of that is true. So this is where there's a lot of subtlety. Sometimes, especially if I just do a post and it doesn't have a lot of, ability to expand on it, people think I'm just like, what are you talking about? Of course, of course the government's real. Of course, the skies being sprayed is real. Of course, it's like shedding's real. I'm like, yeah, it is. So when I'm saying it's not real, it's not. And it's not for people who have developed that expression, that standing and that capacity. But I do fully acknowledge that it is for people who are in that standing and capacity. Now, the problem with that is in order to acknowledge that, you have to acknowledge the fact that you're in the lesser standing, the lesser capacity, the lesser expression. And a lot of people are not able to do that. That's why they'll boost themselves, for example. Like that's the far end of the spectrum. But then you have people who are supposedly wanting more out of life. They're awake enough to want to start to develop that inner authority so they're not subject to external authority, yet they can't drop this idea that something's out to get them. Shedding's definitely real. The spraying in the sky, it's definitely harming our health. The government is definitely real. It can definitely come and tell you what to do or kill you. That's true while you're in that capacity. And I'm not knocking it. I'm just laying things out as they are. So if you have the ability to humble, that's why we called our offering the humble kingdom. Because if you are willing to humble yourself, and I've humbled myself willingly many times, and when I wasn't willing, I got humbled by life many times. I'm still not all the way there, obviously. I just know this is a fundamental rule of law that you need to do it for yourself in order to expand into life in a way that those things aren't real and don't exist. And if you don't do it and you are destined for it, life will do it for you. But I can tell you it's very painful. Ignorance, as they say, as a maxim of law, is no excuse of the law. And the times that I've had to deal with rather heavy consequences and pain, I've known that it was my own doing because I just could not get out of my own way and I wasn't willing to humble myself on my own, and life was doing it for me, and I would just take the lesson. I wouldn't complain about it. I wouldn't be a victim about it. I wouldn't wish it away like I wish I wasn't in pain. I took it, and I would always sit with it. And if I still have to go through it, which sometimes I do, I just ask and I say, what's the lesson here? What am I missing? Where have I been out of alignment? Where do I need to reach more humility within myself? And I'm talking openly, out loud, or silently to God, life, universe, creator, whatever you want to call it. And that's served me very well. It's how I can speak from a lot of lived experience of somebody who had 20 years of chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia and a lot of pain and immuno quote unquote suppression. If somebody on the bus, because I was really poor and I'd have to walk everywhere and catch the bus, if somebody coughed, my blood would boil because they're spreading something. I can catch it. I'm immunosuppressed. This isn't fair. Victim, 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 not fair. It's everybody else's fault, pointing at the guy coughing, he's the enemy, not knowing that that's not how life works. So I'm speaking from somebody who's been sick. I would get 13 colds and flus a year. That's more months. Well, actually, there's 13 moots, technically, every 28-day cycles, but there's 12 months in our Gregorian calendar in a year, and I would get sick 12 to 13 times as a cold and flu, plus other illnesses and injuries. Like that's a lot to go through. That's not normal. That's not life. So I'm speaking from lived experience of having been there and then gotten to the point where I will happily walk through a ward of whoever expressing whatever, and I will not get so much as anything. And that extends to frequency. So even switched on healthy people have come to realize, even in retrospect, that a lot of what they expressed through quote unquote COVID, even though they knew like that's not real, you can't catch a virus and that, but I really got super sick. I really did. And then they're putting it down to frequency manipulation, which is a very real thing. So 5G, 6G, by the way, none of this is new. There's like 28G out there. You're just not told about it. It's not like the new thing by the telco companies, but it's there, and that can definitely, absolutely 100% affect people. But it's just not a rule. It's not a rule of law. This is what people aren't really understanding. So I'm acknowledging, yes, it's real for people in that capacity and that standing. It is not real and not a thing for people who are have worked beyond and through that capacity and standing and have been there, and can say humbly enough, yes, I've been there. Yes, I know what it's like. And now those people that are starting to come to terms with what we share are now able to go, okay, yeah, 5G doesn't actually affect me. I'm not getting sick like I used to. I don't have the headaches. I don't have the brain fog. I can go near these devices. I can go through scanners. I can be near 5G activity, and I'm absolutely fine. Okay, so, but I know that's not universally applicable, but it also is as a potentiality, okay? And once again, that's not to say people who are like that are better than anybody else. We all still have to, because once you get to the point where you start to realize that this is like really the symbiotic electromagnetic realm working with a being who is in their being and expressing as a being who is becoming, not fully, but becoming self-realized, then that has to carry even more humility. Because as soon as you get a little bit full of yourself and think you can walk on water and do the rest, which you can, but as soon as you think it and you act like that, like you're the man and you can do this, then you'll get humbled really severely, and it won't be pleasant at all. I had more to say on that, but I can't really remember what it was. So I think I've made enough of a point on that. So I'll move on. So farmers can sell direct to the private, not the public. So selling to the public is heavily regulated. Selling to the private is not. How do you do that? You set up different systems. You act in a different capacity. You live in a different standing. So you're not dealing with third-party interlopers and quote-unquote authorities, because you are the one authoring the way that things happen. You become the authority because you gain inner authority. Then your expression in the world is not dealing with agents in commerce, as in the state representatives, because you have agency within. So now you're dealing one-to-one, which is with your peers, your community, and you're acting under the jurisdiction of the creator of life, not entities and egregores and spells and illusions and false overlays that are authorities but really aren't, because we are. So you can do that through PMA structures, trusts. You can do that. You don't even need those things to do that, but that's just like a vehicle, one potential vehicle. There's several others you can do it a multitude of different ways. You are only limited by your capacity to create and your capacity to think and feel and act in what you know is right, moral, and just and equitable. Not what a book says, not what Black's Law Dictionary says, not what the constitution of the state or country says, in what you know in your heart of hearts, and that reveals your standing. Because if you don't know, then you don't know, and you are, as a result, as a default mechanism, and it is equitable and fair, you are governed by these other things, these structures, these rules, these authorities. And that's okay. It's just a reason to become more, learn more, have new experiences, become more wise, and therefore have a better expression into the world. It's like you can't escape that. You can't want to defeat anyone who's a bully with never training yourself, unless you're like the 0.011000111 whatever percentage of people who can just murk people because they just can. Like you have to be willing to go and learn how to wrestle and box, and be willing to get boxed around a bit and be pinned to the mat for 10 minutes straight and exhausted and humbled until you can learn how to handle yourself. And that sort of stuff doesn't happen anymore. It's the same with life. It's a very good carryover. It's like, I played guitar at the start. You can't just pick up a guitar, listen to your favorite song, and then play it. Now, if you're a 0.00001% of like Mozart's and Beethoven's and you can do that at 3 years old, sure. But for most people, no. Most people are going to have to work through sucking and sticking at it until you learn to develop your ear, you learn to develop your skill and dexterity, and then you can listen to your favorite song, and then you can pick up a guitar and you can play it. But that takes time, practice, humility, and discipline, much like anything else. So if you're a farmer or in that capacity, or you are connected to farmers, don't let people fall under this trap of acting in the capacity of have to, because no one has to. No one can regulate what you do. You just have to act in a different capacity. Now, I understand that I can't give a full course of education on that in a live stream. I'm just opening doors. We have a course that helps people learn about that, and we also recommend other people who have education and products that do help people to do that. So that's all through the Humble Kingdom. Now, I also want to give a bit of a hypothetical. Imagine that you're really smart and you're really prepared. Now we're going back to being prepared, and you've stockpiled all the food. You've sussed out the water. You've got this secret well or a spring where you've stored water or whatever it is. And you're like, I've worked on my garden for 10 years. I'm good. I have pigs, goats, horses, chickens. I have tropical fruits. I have root vegetables. I have herbs. I have everything. Okay. So let's say that that's true. how long do you think it will take before the average person who is not prepared at all, is very lazy and entitled, which outnumber people who are intelligent and prepared about 1,000,000 to 1? How long do you think that they'll just decide they want some of what you've got? If you're the only person driving around because you have gas and other people don't, how far do you think you're going to get in this car of yours that you're the only one with gas? Or you figured out how to use free energy and, the Joe cells and whatever to make your car run on water or very little fuel and what, like, how far do you think you're going to get? Like, this is what people don't understand. People, in health, we talk about, I talk about, I think other people might, whatever, but, what do I even call it? Well, hang on, just give me a second, because this is an important word to use. Reductionism. Okay. So if I've got, this octave pedal, imagine this is a fruit, right? And this fruit contains magnesium, vitamin C, and folate for whatever reason. There's no food that only has that, but let's just say that. Now, the illusion of reductionism is being able to take a part out of the whole and thinking that that part does the same thing as the whole. So I'm isolating vitamin C, and therefore that's going to give me what it would give me in the whole, in what nature made, in what life made. But that doesn't actually exist in nature outside of the whole. There's no such thing as vitamin C in nature. Now there is, but it's in the whole. It's in the thing designed by nature. You can't take it out. It doesn't work like that. So we have this reductionist way of thinking where we think, if I do this, if I'm prepared and I'm smart and I stock fuel and gas and I stock firewood and I stock food and water, then I'll be okay. Me and my family will be okay. But unless you plan to stay underground hidden the entire time, I guarantee you that other people are going to want what you have and you're not going to be able to do much about it. Even if you're armed, there's only so many rounds you can fire off amongst, too many. It's not going to happen. So here's what I'm going to suggest. And it's only a hypothetical, but it's a way to open your mind to not be as scared and not be as reductionist in your way of thinking. Imagine that on day one of, let's say all the supply chains collapse. Now, by the way, this won't happen, but let's say it did happen because this is like a truth or narrative. Then everybody on day one just gathers in the center of the city or whatever the main landmark is in any town that you live in. And everybody's fine. No one freaks out. The first thing everybody does is give everybody a handshake and a hello and just say, how are you going? What a beautiful day it is today. That's how you start. Because this might seem like a bit, what are you talking about? Like, what does that do? I'll tell you what it does. By doing that, by affirming to life that you are relaxed, and you're relaxed because you're capable, you're relaxed because you have faith and trust and value and virtue and morality, you're showing to life that you're not perturbed by this, and life then shows up to go, okay, cool. You're one of the good guys. Here's something you might not have seen before. Here's something you didn't know about. Here's something that lands in your lap as a miracle of life or God. Because if you're able to do that, you're showing not just to life, but yourself and everybody else around, because there's always a hierarchy in a group scenario, and some people are leaders and some people are followers. And people who are followers, or in, let's say human design terms, they might be projectors rather than generators or whatever. There's some, or Leos as opposed to Aquarians or whatever. Most people are looking around like kids do to gauge what's going on, so then they know how they should feel. So when people who are natural leaders or just understand this and have a natural feeling and a natural trust and faith express like that, then that, like the way water works, is that if you have coherence and structure and harmony, then that affects everything else in the same way. So now everybody is expressing like that, at least temporarily, enough to show life that everything's good, and life shows up in turn to make everything better. Now, no one freaks out, no one rushes. Well, you just figure it out. So, okay, let's get some water. That's the first thing. Let's make sure there's shelter. Let's share the wealth, or let's share resources, pool resources. I guarantee you, in any town, in any city, in any country, there's enough to get everybody more than okay. And this is my personal opinion, and I truly believe this, that within probably a 3-week to a 2-month period, people will have made most of the supply chains just like obsolete. So it's the inversion, because the system as it is pretends that it can make people obsolete.
Like you'll have to be herded into a 15-minute city. You'll have to succumb to the digital ID and the digital currency, and you'll have to succumb to being told what you're allowed to have because of how you behave or how you don't behave. But they say that because the inverse is true. The inverse is that they rely so heavily on compliance and people's inability to just be still and calm and have presence. And everything that's out there in the world is designed as an offer to take us out of that, to forget who we are and constantly be looking outward and outsourcing and worried. Most people are stressed 24/7, consciously or unconsciously, about money, providing safety and security and shelter and the rest of it. It's not a real thing. That's not a natural thing. That's like your overlay or your simulation or whatever. It's all fake. It's all illusion. It's a mirror image. Now, I'm going to expand on other concepts I've been talking about during this stream. The reflection in the mirror, or me talking to you now, I'm unfortunately looking at myself on a screen. That's a real reflection, or that's a real projection. Okay, that's not fake. That's real, but it's not really me. It has this thing that you're seeing and I'm seeing that has no veins. There's no blood flowing through it. It's a digital representation of the life that I am. But what most people do is they project into the false, the mirror image, the illusion, and make that real. And therefore it is real. That's how people get sick unnecessarily and succumb to shedding and succumb to governments and rules and control and have to, and all these mind viruses. When you learn to separate from that and to step into your own standing, which does take courage, faith, belief, trust, real trust, not fake trust, like real. You have to embody it, because if you don't, you'll be left behind and things just won't go well. You'll then get so scared, you're so anxious that you'll then grab at whatever the next thing is that can give you a sense, as fake as it will be, a sense that you are safe and secure and have meaning and value and purpose and all the rest of it. And guaranteed that what you grab onto is, I'll try to stay away from obscene examples, but you might think it's... well, anyway, just make up something funny in your mind, amuse yourself, but you'll be grabbing onto something that you think's helpful, and it's like a bit of a not something you'd want to grab onto. So moving on, I might actually just expand on something I said before, where when we make things real like that, like that is real. Everything that people think is real. I'm not downplaying what people's experience of life is. Yes, because to you it's real, and yes, it is real, and I'll never try to take that away from people. What I am saying though is that when you learn to work with the natural laws and you learn the principles and you start to have embodied experience, your standing improves, your expression improves. And those things that used to afflict you and you can see afflicting others, just don't do that anymore. That doesn't mean you're like invincible and life is like you just think of money and it appears and you never get sick or hurt or anything like that, but you're living in a different you're living under a different standing, in a different capacity, in a different jurisdiction, and you are free from all of those things that most people are trying to fight to be free of. Okay, so I hope that lands with people. Continuing with what I wrote in my notes, I called climate energy in 2020. So it was obvious to people who have been through many, many, many false flags that after they did the next virus thing, because there'd been so many before COVID, it was going to come to energy and climate lockdowns and things like that. So it really doesn't matter like who said what and when and who was right first and whatever. But once you quote unquote, wake up and you start going down rabbit holes, I promise you there are more out there than you'll ever be able to count. And if you spend your time going down these rabbit holes, you are only going to leave behind your purpose in life and your vital energy, your gold. It's going to go. It's going to be left behind. It takes so much energy and they're never ending. That's the thing. It's like they're never ending rabbit holes. They're designed, actually, they're put there to loosh people who are becoming more self-aware so that they get inverted. And then instead of focusing the attention where it's supposed to go, they get titillated and then fall into all these other illusions and just keep going down other rabbit holes thinking that, and it gives them a sense of being right sometimes. It's like, yeah, I knew about COVID. I knew about, climate. I know the lockdowns are coming. It's like, that's nice. Do you want to be right about that? Do you want a pat on the back? Does it really matter? Or do you just think it might be more useful and beneficial and empowering to just live your life in your own capacity and not around constructs that are not actually real, that we then make real? Because personally, I feel, and from a lot of experience, that it's much more fruitful to just live in the capacity that you know without anybody else or a book or a Bible or whatever telling you what's right, moral, just, and equitable, and you living from that real place within you. It will get you so much further. I might not go through the rest of these notes. I wrote here, have you tried waking someone up with something simple and obvious? And you can't save everybody. So anyway, let's go back to the example of being as one as a community. What you also have to do is not live in this kumbaya. What was that? I didn't even say the right word. This kumbaya sense of we're all one and we're all now a community and we all help each other and we'll all get through this together. You have to have enough discernment and sense of what's real to know that that's not real. That doesn't happen. People can work together. I have an analogy for it. And the analogy is this. You have, make sure the cameras can see it. We have point A and we have point B. And in the middle is, so point A is like where everything's kind of terrible and people need to make something happen without freaking out. And to get to point B, you have to go through the eye of a needle. Now, the only way to get through the eye of the needle is for everyone to cooperate and go in a single file that is led and followed and is ordered with rules that are followed. Everybody humbles themselves down to just the greater good of everybody else, and everybody gets through the eye of the needle to get to part B, in which case everybody then individuates again and has their own thoughts, their own belief systems. They can be racist. They can be whatever, because we're not all designed to be the same and to like each other all of the time and cooperate like that. Life doesn't actually work like that. Life rewards those who know who they are, or at least they're on the path to remembering who they are, to set strong boundaries against that which will take them out of that, or try, because there's so much out there. People think that all these pedos are evil and life's evil and the government's evil, and that might be true. I don't really care, because people aren't considering the fact that most of us do not work well together in the grand sense of things, are inherently selfish, evil, arrogant, sinful, and all the other things that, spiritual and religious texts talk about. It doesn't make us bad people, and we shouldn't love thy neighbor, so to speak, but it doesn't mean be their best friend. Sometimes if it's natural and that happens because of harmony and a symbiotic resonance, then yes, but you don't have to just because. That's silly. You'll lose more than you'll ever gain. And that's how I've seen countless communities and all these kumbaya people collapse into a heap of mess, because they think that that's how life works, and it's not. We're supposed to separate races. You're not supposed to hate races, but you're supposed to keep your own bloodline in your own bloodline. For example, I'll actually have a stream on racism coming out, because of, just to give some context to the engineering of putting a lot of immigrants into a lot of Western countries, and people are so weak because of the indoctrinations of multiculturalism and accepting and all the other stuff, which the funny thing is there's a lot of truth in all of that, but because it's inverted and subverted, people then give away their power and they allow what is rightfully, what is moral and just and equitable to be just taken away, because they just succumb to the evil, which is the deception. Buying spring water regularly is not good because it's still. What is better? No, buying it regularly is good, because water doesn't want to stay still for long. So as long as it's turning over regularly and it's not staying still for a long period of time, water in nature doesn't sit still. Water in nature that sits still becomes tepid. It's not the best. So yeah, as long as you're collecting regularly and going through it regularly, it's great. Wondering about change of policy of burning in WA to canopy back. Oh, okay. I'm not sure. I don't know what the policies are, what the change is. It's like anything. If you're acting in a capacity that is for the higher good, and when I say that, you have the ability to judge and discern that, you'll be okay. But when people don't know, because I see this all the time, people become really virtuous about, women should do this and raise kids that way and men this and whatever, and they're really so far off the mark. They're just projecting and rehashing programs that are embedded in them. So that's not when you're should use your best judgment, because that's not developed. There's no experience of showing that's showing life and life affirming to you that that was the right thing. So that's a big part of it. Imagine what all the fear of lockdowns, 5G, etc. does to your psyche and body. Exactly. So people are already on lockdown. Their energy is already on lockdown if they are allowing this kind of narrative to run through them and they're expressing as a result. Local farmers market will not have enough food supplied to your local area, but having a community with you in your circle on a personal level, it can work if you are willing to share. Exactly. And that's the thing. It is about sharing. It's not about taking and like some farmers working for free and giving off everything and sharing it all around. Now that might work for a week, but that's not sustainable. And that's not under natural law. That's not how things work. But yeah, there's more than enough out there. That's what people don't realize. Even if there is an engineered shortage, there is still more than enough out there. You just have to have the stillness and presence to know that as a fact, as a truth, so that then you have the ability to see it. Because most people, like people who think that they're about to die because, there's a flying virus like they did in, 2020, they can't see people living healthfully right in front of them without a mask, without a booster, and without fear. They can't see it. So you have to eliminate fear. That's like a fundamental rule of law. Then you can step into faith and trust. Then you can step into being. And that's where your discernment kicks in, not when you're reacting. You have to be acting from a high capacity. Even spring water from a natural source stored in plastic, it's fine, but it's just not for long periods of time. Which herbs are the most nutrient rich to survive on? Any and all, it doesn't matter. And if they come from your own garden, then the better. And the reason they're so nutrient dense and rich and good for you is because you have a symbiotic relationship with it. Also, the water in your local environment and also the insects and the bacteria, they all store information about the local environment. So when you're taking it from your own garden, for example, and you're not washing it all off, and which you should do if you're buying it from a market or a store, then you're getting so much more than the sum of its parts. So that's so any is the answer to that. Parasites from eating bugs. No, parasites are good for you. Don't worry about that. Also, can you please talk about investing in XRP and gold? I will on another stream. How do you protect your energy when you live with family at different levels of consciousness? That's a great question. That I will do a specific stream on. This one's a little bit not how I'm going to be doing it. I'm actually going to be doing it from the computer and streaming to multiple platforms so I can share clips and lessons and slides and things like that. This is just a casual one. I will do that though. What do you feel about Bitcoin, gold, and silver as money? Yeah, I've semi-covered that before. I'll cover that in more detail in a specific stream because it's more detailed than just giving a short answer to that. All right, so I'll read this and then we will wrap up the stream. It says, if you allow your energy to retract and constrict, you will be subject, which is a slave, to the world. So this is why everything's an offer. And by the way, if you haven't seen it, on my YouTube channel, which is called The Humble Kingdom, if you put into YouTube The Humble Kingdom and then my name, you'll have my channel come up. And my most recent video, I think it is, or one of the last two, is my Everything is an Offer talk that I did at Confluence last year. And I talk about this a lot in that talk, so you can go ahead and watch that. But everything I say is an offer. And in this respect, the offer that energy will be on lockdown and there will be shortages and whatever, that's up to you whether your energy restricts and you close off and you regress, or you stay neutral, or you expand into the world and meet that offer in a capacity that is not like expected, but you can, because everything is fair and fair game under law. We're all equal before and under the law. We can all create. What you create, you own. All these maxims, yes, they apply to commerce and doing trade from corporation to corporation. But what people don't realize necessarily, unless they've listened to a lot of my content, is that these apply first and foremost with the rules of the game of life and how we interact with ourselves and life and those around us, how our organs relate to each other and send currency between one another, creating debt with one so that you deplete organ systems. And then that also relates to the luminaries and the mineral salts that govern or control parts of those processes until we step into that power ourselves, and then we start to run that as the authority there. So this is so much deep. That's why I'm really not interested at all in talking to people about legal and lawful processes, because to me, it's just it's useful and valuable, and especially as a learning tool and for people to gain experience. But I've been there, done that, and other people still do that. And that's great because it has its place. But my place is teaching these lessons to a deeper degree where we're really getting to know who we are and we're remembering who we are. So that's, by the way, if you haven't seen our Beginner's Guide to Natural Law course, that's available at thehumblekingdom.com. And that's a self-paced course, which is entirely dedicated to all of this side of thing that I'm talking about. And the funny thing is that when you get this side of things handled, then the lawful legal processes and that, if you are inclined to want to use that in the world, for example, to protect your ability to share food amongst your community, well, it'll be so much more effective. You won't have the same potential negative consequences of that, and it'll just play out relative to your standing and your capacity, which you develop under life, not under like a government or under a rule of a UCC code 12345. Like that shouldn't matter a lot if you really want to get to know who you are, but it is part of the world and useful to know. If you allow yourself to expand into the world, irrespective of the offer or illusion, you will live life to the full. And that's all we can do. We can live life to the full. Meet life and life. You will meet the healer. You will meet the teacher. You will meet the part of you that you're here to meet in this lifetime. That's all we can really do beyond thinking we know stuff and whatever else. Like that's all we can do. We can take the next step. We can think we know what's coming. We can plan, but all we can really do is take the next step. So if we meet life to expand into the world, then we'll live life to the full. A lot of people have been saying things feel eerie lately, and that is the time that we're in, both astrologically, cosmologically, through the epochs and the way that they move through their cycles. That's the time that we're in. It is a bit of an eerie time. So it's not because there are more frequencies. It's not because there's more agendas. Those go hand in hand with the natural cycles of what we're experiencing, but they don't have to rule and govern you. That's the offer. That's the illusion. So learn to create separation from that rather than being in joinder, which is a legal term, with that. And now it doesn't rule and govern you. You have your own space in which to create. Those people are mostly women, sensitive and intuitive women. Men too, like I said before, but generally speaking, women are like something feels off. Now, before COVID happened, it was the women who could feel something was off. They kind of knew something was coming, but a lot of men didn't listen. A lot of men were behind the eight ball. And then it was mostly women, not all, but it was mostly, at least in the experiences that I had, women taking up leadership roles and taking action and doing things about it, while the men didn't do as much. Again, not all. There were plenty of great men doing great things and still doing great things. But depending on where you were, if you look around, and especially in retrospect, it was mostly women doing that. There are many reasons that things can feel eerie, so it's wise to listen but not create constructive mind based on fears. So that just expands on what I said before. There are many reasons that things can feel eerie. What the trap is to allow fear and doubt to creep in, or believe narratives that you're fed through your screen or your neighbor or your whatever, and then allow constructive mind, because that's all it is. It's a construct of the mind. You know, a lockdown, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, or food shortages or energy and digital IDs. You don't know what that is because it's not here. So all it is constructive mind, and you're creating constructs. This world that we share, the reality, is all construct, and it's all constructive mind. It is both shared collective constructive mind, because the programs that the masses project as the hologram. So when you learn to individuate from the collective mind, you're no longer governed by that collective egregore anyway. So it's all constructive mind. So don't allow, because things feel eerie, allow that to be, that's okay, but have enough presence and have enough, even if you don't have it, have rituals and time that you put aside specifically, not to connect to your kumbaya, whatever, but for stillness. So you can create separation from that, and you can really listen, and you can really search your feelings, not your emotions, not what you're reacting to, not running away with projecting constructive mind, but real feeling. And then whatever that is going to be real and true for you. Yeah, constructive mind based on fears. Okay, like last time, some people will be heavily affected and others won't. So whether there's lockdowns or not, or energy crisis or not, or things go up heaps in price and markets swing and change, some people will be heavily affected. Yes, always. But like always, other people won't. So rather than succumb to a constructive mind that fuel is going to whatever, yes, some will and some won't. Lockdowns will, for some, but for others not. So just don't fall into this constructive mind and bind yourself within this self-imposed prison. Find stillness, which is the way out of it, and then observe it, and then just act in the right capacity. It doesn't have to affect you. It can be all around you and still not affect you. Okay, very key point to remember. That part is the offer and the choice, not the part of a restriction and challenge, because restriction and challenge will be there. Okay, so this is where I like to clarify. I'm not saying it won't be there. It absolutely will. But it's not about that. It's about what becomes of it. So rather than fixating on the thing, which is what most people do, and they're like, oh, this is the evil and that's wrong and this is, let's fight it. And let's okay, it is there. You're not going to change it. You don't create it. You don't interfere with life in order to change it. You determine what becomes of it. And that's why, like I said, and I always say, so many people throughout after 2020, things got better because they weren't fixated on the restriction or the challenge or the wrong. They were fixated on what becomes of it. So therefore, what becomes of them, who they become, and therefore what they express into the world, and therefore what life shows them that the world really is. That's why we don't all share the same world. So what becomes of it is the result, the agreement, and the choice. Now, natural law is protective for those who choose to expand. If you choose, because it is a choice, to regress, you can argue that you're protected because life's always there for you and whatever. But when you leap, the net will appear. So when you choose to expand, natural law or the natural laws are protective for those who are willing to meet life. Like last time, if anything happens, your job, your business, your food supply, your livelihood can be protected or even improved. Like, how's that for a possibility? Is anyone thinking that? Is anybody who's believing that there could be lockdowns and energy crisis and market swings and whatever, is anybody believing in their heart of hearts that things could improve because of that? Not wishing things never change and just keep it how it is because I like it how it is. If you believe and you're open to the possibility things can improve because of that, then nothing rules and governs you except your own limitation. Your relationships can be safe, your energy safe, but like last time, it can all be taken away depending on how well you know who you are in relation to the world, the offer, and the illusions. And this is what I was talking about before when I'm saying that discernment is such a key skill in this game. Okay, that'll do for tonight's stream. Thank you for joining. I just want to quickly check that. Actually, so when I finish streams, they all go up on YouTube. So check my YouTube channel tomorrow if you want to see the replay, if you didn't get all of this. And I wasn't sure if anybody actually picked the song that I played at the start, but I'll include that in the YouTube video and you can put it in the comments there if you didn't get it, and we'll see who got the song. It's sort of an obscure one. Thank you for joining. Enjoy your evening.